Oh my goodness!
There's
Is it that time?
It's time.
The best intro in radio, by the way. It's time for Daniel in the Deacon's Den. Good morning, Deacon Dan Brahier.
Good morning. You know what? You guys insulted guitarists this morning, and I'm a guitar player, so putting sheet music in front of me, that was definitely an insult. So let me just give my corner on this. Question for the two of you. What do groupies and drummers have in common?
What
Groupies
do
and drummers. I don't know.
Yeah.
They both hang out with musicians.
Oh my goodness. And okay, so I know Ron at artoledo.com, if you are a guitarist and you want to take umbrage with him, and Deacon Dan, I'll probably share your email with anybody, any drummer out there that wants to take umbrage with that one. So there you go.
Yeah. It's always easy to pick on drummers, right?
Talking about turning corners, and no one was actually, but that's the best way for me to go forward with this. New season, we've got a brand new school year in front of us. Deacon Dan, you've got a brand new class of deacons coming forward. You've got a whole lot of changes happening in your life right now.
You got that right. There is all kinds of this. August is ripe for change anyway, with the new school year starting and everything. But there are many things happening, and in the deacon world, we on September 6th we start with a whole new group of aspirants into deacon formation, and then a week after that we ordain 13 men into the permanent diaconate, and so it's all of this is happening like right now, and at the same time, people are returning to school back on our university campus. The students are returning to their dorms. They're going to be starting classes on Monday. So there's a lot going on. I kind of was thinking about this from when I retired from full-time work in June of 2022, which is kind of funny because I was, fully retired for 6 weeks before I went back to work. But one gift that my wife gave me at that time was a transparent banner. It's one of those that sticks to the wall on my home office, and it says, "To everything there is a season." And of course that's taken from the book of Ecclesiastes, which happens to be one of my favorite books of the Bible. But there's another song, right? To everything turn. But this idea that there is a season. Ecclesiastes says there's a time for peace, there's a time for war, there's a time to be born, there's a time to die, there's a time to plant, there's a time to reap, and so forth. Everything in our lives has an appointed time. And so we shouldn't be surprised or worried about the fact that change is happening around us. And so I'm seeing these freshmen move back in this last weekend. It was so good to meet some of our new students at the university, because this is freshman orientation week. And so they were back at masses this weekend. We see the attendance at our masses catapult because of all the students coming back in, And so everybody will be moved in by this Sunday, and we have over 6,000 students living on campus at BGSU. So our university parish just comes alive, So in my experience, I've spent my entire kind of personal and church life on an academic schedule. I'm just used to, as a teacher all these years, finishing one cycle in May and starting a new one in August or September, and every year it's that feeling of change. And I actually focused on that in my preaching this past weekend at St. Thomas More, because it occurred to me how hard it is for us as human beings to change, So an example of this from the church's history, my wife and I talked in a previous episode about how we were in Spain this summer, and we visited the tomb of St. John of the Cross in Segovia, and we visited the monastery where St. Teresa of Avila spent over half of her life. And we were reminded at that time about what went on in their lives. St. Teresa of Avila and St. John of the Cross were Carmelites that lived in monasteries in the 16th century, but they recognized the Carmelite order had been around for over 300 years, but the monks and nuns had been living much more extravagant lives and kind of the world than the order was originally intended to be. And so they decided to reform the order, to kind of rein it in and set it back. And while it would be nice if people had looked around saying, oh, this is great, we can put it back to the way it used to be. Well, nobody wants that. That's not human nature. So they faced all kinds of opposition. So St. John of the Cross is arrested, and he's thrown into prison in Toledo, of all places. He spends 9 months in prison, where he does a lot of his most famous writing. But, think about that. The resistance to change was so strong within that order that they were willing to take the guy who wanted to reform it and throw him in a prison so he wouldn't have an opportunity to try to reform anything. The people just didn't want any kind of change. And so this whole idea that everybody undergoes change really occurred to me this weekend, kind of looking at the readings and thinking about what's going on at the school. Because we change. We go through change at the beginning of a school year. We change jobs. We move to a new home. We have new relationships. Someone passes away in our life. A new baby is born in our lives. And these changes are just such a natural part of it. And I was reflecting that a few weeks ago I talked about the book I'm reading by Father Michael Casey. It's called The Longest Psalm. And it's kind of a daily reflection on Psalm 119. And in one of those reflections, he was talking about change. And he talked about how it kind of speculated why we fear change so much as human beings. I really love this. He says that we fear change because it might expose us as being inept at adapting to what's going on around us. That we look a lot stronger, we look a lot more successful if everything today looks the same as it did yesterday, because we don't have to kind of rise to the occasion. We're afraid that we won't be able to rise to the occasion, and it'll make us look bad, among other people. So he said, we really have to step back for a minute and recall that Psalm 118 says, this is the day the Lord has made. Whether this change going on around us or not, this is the day the Lord has made. So let's get with it. Let's do what we need to do. There was a closing prayer on July 30th in the Liturgy of the Hours that said, in the midst of life's countless changes, strengthen us with your never-changing love. So countless changes around us. Everything changes all the time, but God's love for us never does. And that's why Hebrews says Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So it never changes. So we have to trust that. We have to trust that God is in control here. Do you guys know that the phrase trust in the Lord, or some variation of it, appears in the Bible over 100 times?
Oh, really?
Yeah, isn't that amazing? In both the Old Testament and the New, trust in the Lord comes up over and over, almost like it's trying to hit us on the top of the head, saying, at what point did you decide that you were in control of this universe, and that that change is a bad thing? Change is happening because God wills it. So we're encouraged, I think, to trust not only that we're going to get through the changes in our lives, but that God's plans for us are so far beyond what we can comprehend that He has our backs, and He's going to use that change to actually strengthen us in our lives. Not seeing it as a challenge or a thing that has to be overcome, but seeing it as an opportunity to actually grow in our relationship with Him.
Well, I love that. And of course, big changes coming for those 13 that are about to become permanent deacons. That's September 13th, is that right?
Yeah, September 13th. So next week is their canonical retreat. So we're going to be together for 5 days on retreat down at Maria Stein. Really looking forward to just having the time and space with them to pray and prepare themselves for holy orders.
Beautiful. And that's going to take place at Rocher Cathedral. What time is that?
It is at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, the 13th, and everyone's invited.
Very good.
Let's fill up that cathedral. Yeah. Witness these men who are laying down their lives in service of us. Be a good thing for us to be there to see it. Thank you. Thank you, Deacon Dan.
You're welcome. Have a great day.